that his approach to this has been very concrete and specific. He has said that he would withdraw our combat forces at the pace of 1 to 2 combat brigades a month, with the aim of having them all out within 16 months, and use the leverage of our withdrawal to put real pressure on the Iraqi parties to reach the kind of political accommodation that they must if Iraq is to be stabilized. Senator Clinton has not been specific about the timeline in which she envisions withdrawing our forces. She said primarily that she would begin that withdrawal within 60 days. She's recently said that she also thinks that the pace of 1 to 2 combat brigades a month might work, but she's been more vague about the time frame in which she hopes to accomplish the withdrawal, and then, of course, the size of the residual she would leave behind, and the mission she envisions for that, I think, are quite broad.
Sometimes I feel like we get more about the differences, the alleged differences between the campaigns from the surrogates than from the campaigners themselves. Susan Rice, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Good to be with you.
Well, I have a 3-point plan to get out of Iraq, starting with redeploying our troops, but doing it responsibly and carefully, because as many of the veterans in this audience know, taking troops out can be just as dangerous as bringing them in. And we've got to get out of Iraq smarter than we got in. Secondly, we've got to put more pressure on the Iraqi government, including withholding aid from them if they don't begin to stabilize the country themselves. And thirdly, we need an intensive diplomatic effort regionally and internationally. But if it is a possibility that al-Qaeda would stay in Iraq, I think we need to stay focused on trying to keep them on the run, as we currently are doing in Al Anbar province.
I appreciate your coming together to visit with me, and particularly on the very difficult issue that I hear from Iowans about everywhere I go, and that is Iraq.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
I think it's fair to say that the way that this administration has conducted this war has been wrong from the start. In fact, I think it's accurate to say that the president misled everybody. And for the life of me, I don't understand why, if he was so intent upon waging that war, he wasn't better prepared for what was going to happen. We're trying now in the Congress to persuade or convince or require the president to begin to extricate us from Iraq. He hasn't shown any indication that he's willing to do that yet, and I have said consistently that if he doesn't end the war in Iraq before he leaves office, when I'm president, I will.
I'm a retired general, and like many Americans, I and many of my military colleagues are deeply troubled and concerned about the war in Iraq. Hillary Clinton is really the most qualified candidate to lead us safely and smartly out of Iraq.
Senator, I'd like to know how you plan to get us out of Iraq.
Yes.
What is your intention?
The way to think about ending our involvement in Iraq starts with what I consider to be a 3-point plan. Number one, start bringing our troops home. Get them out of the urban combat in this civil war. We cannot police it, we cannot solve it, we cannot end it. Then secondly, make it very clear to the Iraqis that unless they do the political work, they are going to be on their own.
Exactly. That's what they need to do. They're the ones who need to decide about this.
That's right.
Not us.
That's well, we can't do it for them.
We're not responsible.
We can't do it for them.
Directions.
It's 100% right. But then thirdly, we've got to get back to diplomacy. You know, diplomacy's been a bad word in this administration. That has been a terrible mistake.
Absolutely.
It has dug us into even a deeper hole.
We've lost so much credibility with the world, and her ideas of strengthening our relationship with other countries is probably the most important thing.
She understands the dilemma we're in Iraq, and you know, we're in a no matter what you do, you lose situation.
I don't think there is an alternative to our withdrawal, because whether we do it next month or we wait until George Bush leaves office, there will be violence unless the Iraqi people themselves decide to stop it. And the Iraqi leaders and the Bush administration have failed on the political front. They've been unwilling to do the hard work of the reconciliation, of deciding what to do about the oil revenues. And I would put tremendous pressure on the Iraqis and tell them very clearly that unless they began to do the political work, they were not going to get our aid. They were not going to continue to have our support.
Hillary has the capacity. She knows what she wants to do. She will bring this war to a close, and she will do so in a way that protects our strategic position in the region and enhances rather than distracts or detracts from our own national security.
You know, I've been to Iraq 3 times. I have met with a lot of our commanders and a lot of our soldiers and Marines who are on the front lines, and there is no military solution. Everyone says that. Even the most gung-ho, hopeful military commander says there is no military solution.
I mean, you went and seen it firsthand. You were there.
Right.
That makes an impact.
It does.
And, you know, I think
if Senator Clinton does become president and they start a troop withdrawal, I feel that she's going to do it in the safest manner to where our troops aren't going to be in danger.
You can't just snap your fingers and say, okay, it's time to leave. You have to plan it. In fact, I've begun to put pressure on the Defense Department and the Joint Chiefs of Staff to let us know what they are planning, because it takes time to move troops, and particularly in such a dangerous environment as Iraq is. And the Pentagon has not been willing to do that planning.
It means so much to me that Senator Clinton talks about that. And to me, that's the biggest basis on why I believe Senator Clinton should be president, because I believe when she brings the troops home, or when the troops come home, it will be safe.
I'm looking to bring our troops home, starting within 60 days of my becoming president. And here's why, Joe. I have the greatest admiration for the American military. I serve on the Senate Armed Services Committee. I've been to Iraq 3 times. I've met with the leaders of the various factions. But there is no military solution. And our young men and women should not remain as the referees of their conflict. I believe what you're seeing happen is twofold. Of course, the surge, the so-called surge, was able to pacify certain parts of Iraq. If we put enough of our men and women and equipment in, we're going to be able to have some tactical military success. But the whole purpose of the surge was to force the Iraqi government to move quickly toward the kind of resolution that only it can bring about. I think what is motivating the Iraqi government is the debate in the political campaign here. They know they will no longer have a blank check from George Bush, that I will withdraw troops from Iraq. And I believe that will put even more pressure on the Iraqis to finally make the decisions that they have to make. It is not going to be easy. Withdrawing troops is dangerous. That's why I've been, working to make sure that we knew all of the various steps we would have to take, because it's not just bringing our troops and equipment home. We have more than 100,000 civilians there, working for the embassy, working for businesses, working for charities. We have a lot of Iraqis who sided with us, translators and drivers who put their lives on the line for American military forces. So this is complicated, but I'm committed to withdraw our troops and to put the Iraqi government on notice that their time is running out, and they have to make these tough decisions. Well, I think we're in vigorous agreement about getting our troops home as quickly and responsibly as we possibly can, serving notice on the Maliki government that the blank check they've had from George Bush is no longer valid. We're going to have intensive diplomatic efforts in the region. I don't think anyone can predict what the consequences will be. And I think we have to be ready for whatever they might be. We have to figure out what we're going to do with the 100,000 plus American civilians who are there, working at the embassy, working for not-for-profits or American businesses. We have to figure out what we're going to do about all the Iraqis who sided with us, like the translators who helped the Marines in Fallujah, whom I met, who said they wouldn't have survived without them. Are we going to leave them? This is a complicated enterprise, so it has to be done right. And last spring, I began demanding that the Bush administration tell us whether they were undertaking the kind of planning that is necessary for the withdrawal. And clearly they're not. We are trying to end the war. And each of us has made that very clear. We have different approaches. I have a 3-step plan to bring the troops home starting now, put pressure on the Iraqi government to take responsibility and cut off aid when they won't, and engage in intensive diplomacy, regionally and internationally.
Senator Clinton has not been specific about the timeline in which she envisions withdrawing our forces.
Senator Clinton.
I've put forth a comprehensive 3-point plan to get our troops out of Iraq, and it does start with moving them out as soon as possible. But Joe is right. I have done extensive work on this, and the best estimate is that we can probably move a brigade a month. If we really accelerate it, maybe a brigade and a half or 2 a month. That is a lot of months. My point is they're not even planning for that in the Pentagon. You know, Mr. Barry, I am so sorry about the loss of your son, and I hope to goodness your youngest son doesn't face anything like that. But until we get this president and the Pentagon to begin to at least tell us they are planning to withdraw, we are not going to be able to turn this around. And so, with all due respect to some of my friends here, yes, we want to begin moving the troops out, but we want to do so safely and orderly and carefully. We don't want more loss of American life and Iraqi life as we attempt to withdraw.